During the National Day holiday while I was working overtime at the office, my villa at home caught fire. My twin daughters, Grace and Penny, were trapped inside. The nanny called to say that the firefighters had only rescued my younger daughter, Penny, and that my older daughter, Grace, was in a very dangerous situation. However, I took my time putting on makeup before heading back to the villa. In my previous life, when I received the call, I rushed back without hesitation. The scene was left with only Grace's burnt and disfigured body, surrounded by a crowd of live streamers. The nanny, facing the camera, accused me of being indifferent to my two daughters, claiming that I resorted to violence and verbal abuse whenever I was unhappy. She stated that I had left my 6-year-old children alone at home, which led to this tragedy. When my husband saw me, his eyes were red with emotion, and he slapped me hard, demanding to know why I had destroyed his faith. For years I had looked down on him, treating him with disdain as a son-in-law, and he had endured it all for the sake of our daughters. But today, I had caused the death of his beloved daughter. My little daughter Penny looked at the camera with a face full of grievance, and said that her mom didn't love her at all. This morning I didn't even make her breakfast. She and her sister went to the kitchen looking for something to eat, only to find that the kitchen was on fire. But over the years I felt like I would do anything for them. I treat my husband with respect and courtesy, and I dote on my daughters. Even when I'm busy, I will take time to be with them. In the face of their slander, I found myself unable to refute it, as these streamers portrayed me as a vengeful woman who despises other women. My home and the entrance to my company were crowded with outraged online users, and even my parents got involved in this situation. To help me avoid the spotlight, they planned to take me back to our hometown. However, on the highway we encountered extreme online users who attempted to force us off the road. While trying to evade them, we ended up crashing off the highway. When I opened my eyes again, I found myself back on the day before the fire. Honey, we're almost home. I brought you your favorite durian cake. During the day, I shook the cake box with a fond smile on my face. Our little daughter Penny ran over and proudly said, "Mom, I picked the strawberries on the cake." At that moment, Grace pouted and said a bit sadly, "But Grace wanted to pick strawberries for Mommy too." Looking at the screen, I couldn't help but tremble as I saw my gentle husband and lovely daughter on the other side. I clearly remember that on this night in my past life, Tim Bai and our daughter came home shortly. I held my little princesses in my arms, happily finishing the cake. Tim gently embraced me, sharing the interesting things from his day and reminiscing about our past. Before going to sleep, he softly kissed my forehead. I lay in his arms feeling happy, as and Shun drifted off to sleep. This simple and beautiful life has lasted for 10 years. I have known Tim for exactly a decade. I was just starting college at that time. To avoid creating a barrier with my classmates, I kept my identity as a wealthy heiress a secret. During a student council event, I had a fortuitous encounter with Tim. He pursued me for nearly a year, and eventually I was moved and decided to be with him. After graduating from university, my parents opposed our relationship, insisting that he agreed to move into our family. They also required a prenuptial agreement stating that he would receive nothing in the event of a divorce. I thought he would be too proud to accept such conditions. However, to my surprise, he agreed to everything for my sake. More than a year after getting married, I gave birth to twin daughters, Penny and Grace. To make it easier for me to manage the company, he resigned and stayed home, never complaining. I once asked him if there was something he wanted to do, and I assured him that I would fully support whatever he liked. I hope that family is not a burden for him, but rather a source of support for him to pursue his dreams. Tim always gently says that his biggest dream is to take good care of our children, and to quietly support me from behind. I have always felt fortunate to have found a man who truly cares for me. Especially after witnessing the various unhappy marriages around me, I treasure our hard-earned happiness even more. I once thought my life would always remain this blissful. The next day, as soon as I arrived at the office, I received a call from the nanny, saying her house had caught fire. I rushed home immediately, but I was too late. Upon seeing Grace's body, I felt an overwhelming sorrow and nearly fainted. The nanny accused me of being indifferent to my daughter in everyday life, and claimed that I was only putting on an act now that something had happened. At that moment, I was still in mourning and had no mental energy to comprehend the meaning of her words. The babysitter, Aunt Jo, told the onlooking live streaming host that she had reprimanded and punished my two 6-year-old daughters for her slight dissatisfaction, and that this time it was her decision to leave the children at home, which led to the incident. I initially thought Aunt Jo was trying to shirk responsibility, especially since such a major issue had occurred in our home and she, as the babysitter, could hardly escape blame. Just as I was angrily accusing her, Tim returned. Seeing Tim, I finally felt a sense of support in my heart. The pain of losing my daughter feels like a knife in my heart. I longed to lean into his embrace, but to my surprise, when he saw me for the first time, his eyes were red and he slapped me hard. The slap left me completely stunned. He accused me, saying, "And you wicked woman. Ever since I married into your family, you have never treated me as a human being. You usually hit me and insult me, but I've tolerated it all for Penny and Grace. But why did you leave just the two of them at home and walk away by yourself? Grace is your own daughter, how could you do this?" Tim's face showed anger, and he yelled at me in a hysterical manner. His once gentle gaze was now unfamiliar and filled with hostility. I couldn't help but long to give everything for her daughter, while those around me were busy fanning the flames of the situation. Today I didn't cook for the two of them, and she and her sister, hungry, went to the kitchen to look for something to eat. To my surprise, the kitchen was on fire. Faced with the betrayal of someone I was closest to, I felt as though my heart was being squeezed, making it hard to breathe. By the time I wanted to explain, it was already too late. These online streamers have spread various accusations against me. Some self-proclaimed righteous netizens have exposed my personal information and blocked me at my company and home. My company has been vandalized by them, making it difficult to operate, and I can no longer live at home. Both online and in reality, I am inundated with insults, and I have been labeled as a man-eating femme fatale. Under this dual pressure, I developed severe depression. My parents wanted to take me back to our hometown for a little relaxation, but while we were on the highway, we were maliciously cut off by another driver. Our car suddenly veered off the highway. I still can't understand it even to this day. My husband and daughter were supposed to be my closest companions. Why did they suddenly turn against me? Last time I couldn't protect Grace, which led to her losing her life in a fire, and it also resulted in my parents being involved in a car accident. This time I must get to the bottom of everything. I took a deep breath and tried to recall the unusual aspects of my past life. Many details that I had previously overlooked gradually surfaced in my mind, and the more I thought about it, the more a chill ran down my spine. I called my secretary and asked her to contact Alex Liu to help me investigate some matters. In less than 10 minutes, Alex reported the findings to me, and I felt as if I had fallen into an ice cave. After a while, I trembled as I said I would do everything possible to continue the investigation. Also, could you please help me look up a few more people's identities? Just as I hung up the phone, the doorbell rang. Tim was back. I forced myself to suppress my emotions, trying hard to conceal my unease from him. The living room door opened and Penny and Grace rushed in first, immediately throwing themselves into my arms. "Mom, I miss you so much today," Penny said with a smile as she kissed me on the cheek. Grace, standing beside her, added, "I miss Mommy too." Looking at the two little princesses in my arms, I could hardly hold back my tears. In my past life, Grace's charred body often appeared in my dreams. I dreamed of Grace in the fire crying out to me, "Mom, it hurts so much, please save me." Yet I was powerless, only able to watch as the flames slowly consumed her. I suffer from depression, partly due to the slander by Penny and Tim, along with the horrible online abuse. The other part stems from Grace's death. I wish I could hold Grace and promise her that I would never let anyone hurt her again in this lifetime. I want to ask Penny, with all the love a mother has for you, why would you slander her? But I can't ask. There are many things I haven't figured out yet. I need to wait. Please don't disturb Mom anymore. She's had a hard day and deserves to rest. Just then Tim walked in carrying a cake. I used to think he was gentle and kind, but now I only feel disgust. Tim handed me my favorite cake and asked why I wasn't eating. I felt uncomfortable, so I pushed the cake aside and said I wasn't in the mood to eat today. Tim seemed surprised and quickly sat down next to me, asking with concern if I was feeling unwell and if I needed to go to the hospital. I just need to take a nap. You can stay with them tonight. I hesitated for a moment before saying, you can sleep with Penny, I'll be with Grace. Okay. Tim frowned slightly, hesitated to speak, then obediently set the cake aside and took Penny's hand, saying, Penny, Mommy isn't feeling well today, so let's not disturb her and let her get some rest. Okay, good night, Mommy. Penny leaned over and gave my face another kiss. Watching them walk away, I couldn't help but smile with a hint of sarcasm. Tim never refused me. I had always thought that was love. However, through the experiences of this life, I understand that a genuine marital relationship inevitably requires some adjustment. This kind of unconditional tolerance is not love, rather, it is a performance. Grace hesitated and asked Mom, are you not feeling very happy? I asked her, is everything okay? What did you all do today? Grace replied, today Dad took us to the amusement park. Afterwards, he and Penny went to buy a cake, and Dad asked Grandma Jo to stay with me while we waited for them to come back. Grace said happily. The Grandma Jo she mentioned is our family's nanny, Aunt Jo. She started working for us when we had just gotten married. After I became pregnant with Penny and Grace, we hired a maternity nurse for 6 months, and since then it has been Aunt Jo and my husband taking care of our 2 daughters. Joma has a great personality and takes care of me and my daughter as if we were her family. Even the nanny who stayed with us for only half a year left a good impression on us. Now that nanny and Joma are still friends. I never would have imagined that Joma, who has always been so caring towards me, would publicly call me an irresponsible mother tomorrow. So what do you think of Grandma Jo? I asked. Grandma Jo is a really nice person. Grace hesitated for a moment before saying, but I think Grandma Jo likes Penny a bit more. Children are indeed more sensitive. There are many details I might have overlooked, but Grace can sense them. I felt a bit regretful that ever since I gave birth to them, I've spent most of my time at work. If I could have taken more time to be with them, perhaps the tragedies of the past could have been avoided. I held Grace in my arms, tears streaming down quietly. She fell asleep quickly, but I tossed and turned, unable to find rest. The next day, I saw the latest message from Alex. My fingers trembled uncontrollably, and tears flowed as I cried silently. I couldn't help but laugh at myself. Even though I've been trying hard to focus on my life, this tragedy is still inevitable. The issue isn't about whether I'm good enough. It's that some people in this world are simply too wicked. And you have an early meeting today. Tim gently knocked on the door and said, I've prepared breakfast for you, sleepyhead. Get up quickly. I took a deep breath, opened the door and walked out of my room to see a bowl of seafood congee on the dining table, which Tim had cooked in advance. In my previous life, he said that I left behind 2 daughters while making porridge, which led to that tragedy. I originally wanted to quietly finish this bowl of porridge, but I felt like something was lodged in my throat. Seeing this bowl of porridge, I couldn't help but recall the way he slandered me with his gaze. In the end, I could only push the porridge aside and lost my appetite. I tidied up a bit and then left home. Not long after, I got into the car that Alex had prepared and quietly returned to the vicinity of the villa. It had been less than an hour since Joma called me in my previous life, and I could clearly hear my own heartbeat. Soon after, Joma, who had originally taken 3 days off, should have gone back to her hometown after spending time with Grace, but instead, she secretly returned to the villa. At the entrance, I saw her arguing with Tim for a few minutes, and in the end, Tim, looking displeased, nodded. Before long, he drove away. In less than 10 minutes, thick smoke began to rise from the kitchen of my villa. Finally, it was happening. My breathing quickened involuntarily, and my hands gripped the steering wheel tightly. The memory of the last nightmare flooded my mind, and I was overcome with a suffocating fear. Miss Shun, we have just discovered something important. At this critical moment, Alex's call suddenly came in. He asked seriously, did you stay in the hospital when you first got pregnant? I curiously replied, yes, why do you ask? At that time I had just found out I was pregnant, but I also discovered that there was a tumor in my uterus that could potentially affect the development of the fetus. Tim was very anxious and personally accompanied me for the surgery. Alex said, Miss Shin, we are still conducting tests and we expect to have results soon. After hanging up the phone with Alex, I received a call from Aunt Jo. Miss Shin, bad news. Our villa is on fire, and Penny and Grace are trapped inside. The situation is very dangerous. You need to come back quickly. I recalled that in my previous life when I received this call I didn't think much about it. The villa has a complete fire safety system, Tim is still at home, and Aunt Jo is on leave. Why was she the one making the call? Now I understand that this is all just a setup. I said calmly. Mom Jo was taken aback on the other end of the line, clearly not expecting me to respond this way. She wanted to say something, but I had already hung up the phone. I sat in the car, having carefully applied a sophisticated and alluring makeup. In order to unveil their conspiracy, I knew I had to present myself in the best possible light. Once I finished my makeup, an employee from Alex's studio sent me a video. The moment I received the video, I took a deep breath. It was time to put an end to this farce. News about the fire spread rapidly online, with headlines mentioning the luxurious villa, the twin daughters, and the cruel mother, capturing people's attention. The firefighters have extinguished the flames in the villa. The specific cause of the fire is still under investigation, but the internet is already filled with various accusations against me. Coincidentally, many streamers were live broadcasting nearby during the fire, capturing the entire incident. What surprised me was that Ms. Shun actually left the two children home alone. She usually shows indifference towards these two kids and is often critical of us caregivers, which leaves me with no choice but to take even better care of the children. However, it has been over an hour since I notified her, and she still hasn't come back. Aunt Jo, feeling heartbroken, expressed her confusion over the loss of her child. She wiped away her tears, clearly in deep sorrow. A host approached her, handed her a microphone, and pointed to Penny, who looked quite wronged, asking, "Little girl, I just saw that you were trapped in the kitchen. Why did you go into the kitchen to play? My mom has not allowed my sister and me to eat together since last night, and we were very hungry, so we decided to go to the kitchen to find something to eat," Penny said with a pitiful expression. Just as we arrived in the kitchen, a fire broke out unexpectedly. After speaking, Penny burrowed into Aunt Jo's arms. Meanwhile, discussions about this incident began to heat up online. Many people commented that parents have the softest hearts in the world, yet there are moms like this one. Even animals take care of their young, so it's really disappointing to see such behavior from this woman. Is there really no law to hold her accountable? I believe that neglecting a child after giving birth is no different from intentional harm. Many netizens have expressed their anger and dissatisfaction online. In the live broadcast room, viewers have been leaving comments, and many short video lawyers have also brought this up. Some irresponsible lawyers conducted a trial against me online without any investigation at all. It seems that if there were still a punishment like Ling Chi, everyone would want to impose severe penalties on me. This kind of cyber violence is difficult for those who haven't experienced it to understand its terror. The last time I found myself caught in a whirlpool of public opinion, any explanation felt just like a defense. I had just lost my daughter and then faced betrayal from someone I was closest to. Under the weight of such overwhelming blows, I found myself powerless to resist. Not only was I unable to take revenge for Grace, but my parents also tragically lost their lives in the accident. However, this time I am fully prepared. In my previous life, I was helpless in the face of the tides of the internet. In this life, are you ready to face the challenges of the online world? At this moment, discussions on the internet have reached a peak. I drove back to the villa and calmly stepped out of the car. As I arrived, the cameras of many online streamers turned towards me simultaneously. I smiled slightly and greeted them, saying hello. In such circumstances, how could she still manage to smile after just losing her daughter? An enthusiastic internet user captured a photo of the corners of my mouth turned upward, and that image quickly went viral online. The already angry netizens became even more agitated because of this photo. Some of them, driven by their emotions, even started to drive to my villa, wanting to confront me in person. Grace has already passed away. Why are you here? You caused your daughter's death. Aren't you afraid she will come to find you? I think she must have come after seeing what was happening online, right? If it weren't for the live stream, would you have just disappeared after your daughter died? If I were you, I would be filled with self-reproach. The onlookers were angrily shouting at me, and some even picked up stones to throw at me. Meanwhile, during the day he drove over as well. In my previous life when I first arrived, he was only a minute away from coming back to me. In this life, I waited a long time after putting on my makeup, only to miss him by a minute. He didn't wait for the vehicle to come to a complete stop. He jumped out of the car and called out excitedly, "Grace." He stumbled towards the charred body, and if it weren't for the police stopping him, he would have likely embraced the corpse. In my last life, when I saw him, I thought I had found someone to rely on. But unexpectedly, what I found instead was a situation that led me to despair. And why did you treat me this way? Ever since I joined your family, I have endured all the humiliation you've inflicted on me. But why did you have to kill Grace? She is your daughter too. Tim's eyes were red as he rushed towards me. Just as he was about to strike, I was faster and slapped him. He was momentarily stunned, his eyes filled with anger as he said, "You usually hit me and scold me, but today you caused Grace's death. How can you even think of hitting me? Who told you that I was responsible for Grace's death?" I asked coldly. "Grace's accident happened because of your carelessness, not because of me. Do you really want me to take the blame?" cried Joma. "Course it's you." I took out the video I had prepared in advance and said with a cold smile, "With this video, what else do you have to say?" Before I finished speaking, the video started playing automatically. In the footage, Mrs. Zhou entered the kitchen alone, turned off the fire suppression system, and then set the entire kitchen ablaze. As thick smoke poured out, she dragged Grace and Penny to the door and ruthlessly pushed Grace inside. At this moment, the person with a kind expression, who was crying heartbreakingly, wore a venomous smile on their face. After watching this segment of the video, the onlookers, including streamers and netizens, were left in shock. This was not just an ordinary fire, it might also be a case of intentional murder. The little girl named Penny had actually lied. I remember her saying that she had gone to the kitchen with her sister to look for something to eat, only to encounter a fire in the kitchen. I said before that if the nanny had noticed the fire in the kitchen in time, she could have saved the children. How could anyone have died? Now it has been confirmed that this nanny is the real culprit. Public opinion on the internet has turned around in an instant. Mom Zhou was stunned and desperately tried to grab my phone. I have a backup, so taking my phone would be pointless. The police will determine the authenticity of the video. All you need to do is wait for the legal consequences. I admit that I harmed Grace, but it's because of you. When Mom Zhou realized she couldn't shift the blame onto me, her face suddenly twisted with malice as she said, "You never treat us nannies as human beings, and that's why I took revenge on your daughter. This is all your own doing. And you aren't a good person either, you clearly have surveillance but just stood by and watched me harm Grace. Deep down you are cold and selfish. I will pay for my actions, but you won't escape unscathed either. And Grace is your biological daughter. You know that Joma wants to harm her, why don't you stop it? In your heart, does Grace's life only hold the value of a maid's revenge?" Tim said angrily. "They can't shift the blame for Grace's death onto me. So now they're deliberately painting me as a cold-hearted and ruthless person. Clearly, they want to exert pressure on me through online violence. Having experienced the despair of a past life, these little tricks were utterly useless to me." I smiled slightly and said, "Tim, have you been lying so much that you actually believe your own words? Don't you know how much I love Grace? How could I bear to use her life to take revenge on someone else?" Tim's expression immediately froze. Just as I finished speaking, my secretary brought Grace out of another car. Everyone in the room was once again stunned. Someone instinctively asked what was going on with the corpse. I replied that it was just a dummy I found at the film studio. As soon as she pushed Grace into the kitchen, I had already sent someone to rescue her. I gave a cold smile and asked them, "Do you understand now why I'm laughing? I found your clumsy performance ridiculous." "No, that's not what I meant to say. And let me explain, this was just a misunderstanding. I was misled by Aunt Zhou too. I thought you had really caused Grace's death, which made me lose my composure." Tim was flustered and eager to explain. I kicked him in the stomach, knocking him to the ground, and hoarsely asked him, "Is it true? Didn't you just say that I have been humiliating you in every possible way?" I continued, "You told me that you were taking revenge on me because I don't see you and the other maids as human beings, but the truth is, all of this is part of your conspiracy against me. Do you really think I don't understand what's going on?" I then showed him the photos. I presented the information that Alex had gathered, which included intimate photos of Tim with a young girl, as well as their chat records, transfer records, and hotel stay records, and even his driving routes. Seeing this clear evidence, Tim's face instantly turned pale, and he sank down to the ground. My husband had cheated, but you might wonder what this has to do with my daughter Grace's death. I coldly said, take another look at a message I found. I showed them the message. To my shock, the girl in the photo turned out to be Aunt Jo's daughter. You not only want to harm my daughter, but also want to use public opinion to force me so that she can be with your daughter? I bit my lip and said in a hoarse voice, you are truly ruthless. 11 years ago, when I saw the results of Alex's investigation, I never expected it to turn out like this. I had always thought it was Jo's daughter who seduced my husband Tim into cheating, but it turned out that I was the real third party. It turns out that they had been together for 11 years. All those 10 years of tenderness were just Tim's acting. He portrayed himself as the perfect husband, only to betray me at a crucial moment. I can't believe I didn't notice anything during those 10 years. They probably planned all of this from the very beginning. This major plot twist is truly unexpected. The son-in-law is with the maid's daughter, attempting to drive the family to the brink of death in order to seize their wealth. Such a storyline really makes one think they deserve an award. Have you noticed that the time they've been cheating is even longer than the time they've been in a romantic relationship or married? A man who appears tender and caring on the surface is in reality quite deceptive behind the scenes. He seems to love you, but in reality he wants your life, and that is truly terrifying. Men can be really frightening. The online sentiment has completely reversed. Those friends who initially wanted to get closer to me because they saw me smile are now shocked by this truth. An irritable person directly grabbed him, beating him while cursing him for losing his masculinity. Please don't hit my dad anymore, Grace said anxiously, trying to stop these people. Viewers watching the live stream were moved to tears by this scene. This adorable little girl was still defending her father at that moment. Perhaps she had no idea that just moments ago, her father had actually intended to use her life to harm her mother. Penny, on the side, had hidden away in a corner early on to avoid the chaos. One sibling had endured life and death struggles and still had to protect their father, while the other, without any real danger, chose to betray their mother. The disparity between the twins is truly baffling. I came across discussions online where netizens even wondered why they would choose to harm the kind and lovely Grace, while letting the malicious Penny off the hook. Some speculated that Grace would certainly support their mother, whereas Penny might betray her. Seeing such discussions, I couldn't help but feel a sigh in my heart. Grace's personality is quite similar to mine. Although she is not good at expressing herself, she is very emotional and cares deeply for her sister. On the other hand, Penny's personality is completely different. While she appears sweet and charming on the surface, she is somewhat indifferent and selfish inside. This may be a trait inherited from Tim. After today's events are over, I plan to find a suitable tutor to help improve Penny's character. Just then Alex called me. He spoke in disbelief. Miss Shun, this is the information we just uncovered. I hope you can hang in there. What information? Why do I need to hang in? My heart sank as I saw the information he sent. Everything went dark before my eyes. How is this possible? I said in disbelief, Miss Shun, I understand how you feel. We were also very shocked when we discovered this. However, it is very likely to be true. I suggest you consider doing a paternity test. Alex sighed. His professionalism was convincing. It seemed that this matter was indeed real. Tim, how could you do this? I rushed in to push away those who were attacking Tim, kicking at them furiously while shouting in anger, how could you do this? I'm going to kill you. A streamer secretly directed the camera towards my phone lying on the ground, trying to see what message I had received. When I saw that message, the viewers were left stunned. The message revealed that Alex and the others had investigated and discovered that the surgeon who performed my operation was actually Jo Ma's daughter. At that time, she was also newly pregnant, and taking advantage of my surgery, she swapped one of my embryos with hers. Among the twin daughters I gave birth to, one is mine while the other is theirs. This incident has shocked many netizens. Can anyone really do something like this? It's hard to imagine. Now everything is clear. At a crucial moment, Penny betrayed her mother, which also explains why Auntie Wong favored Penny. It is understandable that Tim often brings Penny to meet his lover, while leaving Grace at the amusement park to play. The police quickly arrested both Zhou Ma and Tim. Zhou Ma was sentenced to 10 years in prison for attempted murder, and her conviction had serious repercussions. Tim also faces 3 years of imprisonment. Before his detention, I asked him to sign the divorce agreement. He didn't say much, he just silently signed his name. At that time I really wanted to ask him if he ever loved me, but in the end I couldn't bring myself to do it. That question, regardless of the answer, felt like a mockery to me. Lily Lee also received her just punishment. Not only was she expelled from the hospital and barred from practicing medicine for life, but she also had to face exposure online, which was even more severe than what I had previously endured. The results of the paternity test between Penny and me are out, confirming that we have no blood relation at all. When Penny was taken away, she seemed indifferent and mentioned that her mother often bought her snacks, while I only focused on her studies. Looking at this child, who is not biologically related to me but whom I raised, I couldn't help but feel a pang of pain in my heart. However, having gone through the despair of the past, I vowed not to repeat those mistakes in this life. 3 years have passed, and I learned from mutual classmates that Tim, after serving his sentence, wanted to find Lily, but Lily had already gotten married. Tim wanted to fight for custody of Penny, but to his surprise, Lily had sent Penny away. When Penny was found, she had become very haggard. In a fit of anger, Tim stabbed Lily. After committing the murder, he chose to turn himself in and was ultimately sentenced to life in prison, while Penny was sent to an orphanage. In the orphanage, Penny cried continuously, calling out for her mother, and a friend asked me what I thought about it. I smiled faintly and said, "Do you think it's possible that her mother caused her pain in her past life? I admit there are many things that I find hard to bear. But if I were to look back one more time, I know I would inevitably get stuck in it."